Hi, Smart Community friends. In this episode of the Smart Community Podcast, I have a really great chat with Rohan Light, a public interest technologist who works on data strategy, governance, and risk problems. Rohan tells us about his dual background in the country and the city, and his passion for people, communities, the society we live in, and data governance. Rohan and I discuss how he got into the smart community space and what a smart community is to him, as well as what data means for our communities and how data governance issues can become democratic issues. We discuss why it's important that communities and government are engaging with data conversations and ethics, and the power of not only asking the communities the right questions, but also of understanding the differences in language in their answers. Rohan and I discussed the hidden problem of people who are not tech-enabled getting left behind, and the opportunities and challenges of baking smart community thinking and engagement into our essential services. Rohan shares his thoughts with us on bias in algorithms, algorithmic accountability, creeping AI ethics issues, and the paradox of things that can be explained but not understood. Plus the need to bridge the gap between expertise and the communication of expertise. We finish our chat discussing the emerging trend of the role of public art as a means of dealing with the techno shock we are experiencing, and why cities must get across the problem of the filter bubble and disinformation online and offline. As always, we hope you enjoy listening to this episode as much as we enjoyed making it.
Welcome to the smart community, smart regions, smart towns, and smart cities. It's where we live, work, and play. With smart communities, the future starts today. Big data, smart mobility, emerging trends galore. The Smart Community Podcast is what you're looking for.
Hello, Rohan. How are you today?
Oh, g'day. Zoe, I'm very well, thank you.
That's so good to hear, and I'm super excited to have this conversation with you and have you on the podcast. So thanks for joining me.
You're welcome. Glad to be here.
Okay, let's jump straight into it. Can you tell us about your background and what you're passionate about?
Yeah, background in the context of this discussion, at least. I'm half city, half country. Born in Wellington here in New Zealand, but moved to the Wairarapa onto a small sheep and cattle farm during my teens. And bouncing between city and country is basically what I've done most of my life. I'm very interested in people, communities. They form the society they live in. And my specialty in that regard is data and data governance.
Yeah. And we met on LinkedIn, and you are very active on LinkedIn. You're always sharing new articles in this space and tech and data and, smart communities, all these type of things. You seem to have quite a breadth of knowledge or, gathering information in this space. So I want to go back to that. And how did you get interested in this space of smart communities?
The core of it is a strange origin story, actually. History is the only thing I've ever been interested in consistently over my life. I sort of jump around a lot. But the history of humanity is the history of people in cities. And the history of people in cities is marked by, both love and hate of each other. And it's usually grounded in strong community identities. So I'm eternally fascinated by the crazy and amazing things we do. With regards to the particular view I have, which is in the data world, my rule of thumb is every data issue is a society issue somewhere. There's going to be a rights issue somewhere. And so as we see, particularly in our current state, the issue of people, data, and cities is very hot right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree with you. I think it's, in 2021, the thing that is true is that we are connected in so many different ways, which is, that's obvious. But I think the nuance in the connection is getting more and more, what's the word? It's like we can't talk about anything without it being connected to something else. And I think, that's the world that we live in. I had a really great panelist on at our 100K downloads party, Debbie Reynolds, and the quote of the night was that anyone's problem is everyone's problem. And I just really love that because it really showed that connectivity across the board. And I guess the reason I'm rambling about this is because we talk about data and tech and people think, oh, well, that's got nothing to do with me. And, I don't, I'm not in that space. I don't know, what that means. But everybody needs to be in this space and working and, playing in this space, but just that it does affect all of our lives.
Yep. Basically, data, broadly understood, is a quantization of a person. So everything we do is quantized now, fed into various machine learning, big data, or AI automated decision-making platforms, and we're in that data stream, whether we like it or not. And I think this is why it suddenly becomes a rights issue when we have lots and lots of people's data rights mingled in the same place, which is cities and communities.
So what is a smart community to you?
Yeah, good question. I think the main thing that springs to mind is a community that understands its place in the environment and that it orients its risks as appropriate. So every city, every community environment is a unique geographical place. And it's where the people meet and live and sustain themselves, or not, as we can see. Sustainability is going to become a really, really big issue. So the main thing for me around a smart community is that it recognizes that there are constraints and limits it has to live within, and it uses data, knowledge, information, broadly understood, to maintain that balance.
And I think more and more you're talking about like we're part of this data machine, big data, the algorithms that are making decisions about us or for us or, about us with other people. And I think in that's kind of one component of it. But, when we then reach out to, well, what does this actually mean for our communities? I think that's where this complexity and nuance and where we need those different voices and those different opinions. And it's really key, right?
Yeah, there's one reason why data governance issues suddenly become democratic issues. They switch really quickly. One moment we're having a conversation around the particular nuances of an algorithm powering facial recognition technology, and then we're talking about the rights of people to a safe data sphere within cities. It morphs very, very quickly. And that's when we start to see the disparate impacts. We start to understand how inequality is sort of baked into the way cities have been run in the past. For every major issue at the moment, we can see in cities, there's a data element to it. And that data element is all about self-expression. It's about people and communities expressing themselves on their own terms.
And from a data perspective, when we're talking about communities and we're talking about cities and we're talking about government, I'm interested to hear your thoughts about, I guess, for people that don't understand why this is important or, data, that's just something that happens to, over here. Why is it so important that, I guess, communities and government, I guess there's probably two different things, get involved in this conversation, or not just conversation, but action as well in the data space?
I think the main thing, why is it important? It comes down to the options that aren't available to you. So we tend to think, we're all part of the same community and we'll have the same set of options. But when we start digging into, community and social issues, it's really clear that not all of us have access to the same options. And those options that are denied to various parts of society are invisible to them. So they don't even know. This is what makes it such a tricky topic. There is bound to be, for any single citizen, a whole set of choices that aren't necessarily open to them. They have to go and hunt them and find them and discover them. And this, again, goes to this core issue of what does it mean to be a citizen?
That's so interesting and such a good way to put it as well. And something I've been thinking about, it's like, because we talk about a lot about engagement, engagement with the community and, kind of two camps where it's like, yep, talk to the community, they'll tell you exactly what they want, and then we do that. And then the other camp is they don't know what they want because they're not aware of all the opportunities. Or, I'm thinking the story that's come up is, when we had the horse and it was like, do you want a car? It was like, no, I need a faster horse. So it's like there's these two kind of distinct camps of the community knows everything and they'll tell you exactly what they want and that will be the right answer. And then the other one where it's like, they can't possibly tell us exactly what they want, so let's not even talk to them at all. And I'm kind of in, which is bananas. But I'm kind of in the middle here, more towards, yes, let's ask the community and give them the tools to be able to tell us what they need.
Right.
Because I feel like what you just said there is that some of those options aren't even things that are in people's heads. So when you're asking them what they need, they're only going off a certain, knowledge base of what they already have.
One thing we see quite a lot is people turning up to communities with stupid questions, or, with questions that the community goes, why would you even ask me that? Therefore, the answer is, I don't know. And we go away and go, well, they didn't know anything what we wanted to learn about. The other side of it is, yes, communities do have very well structured questions, but they're just in a different place and they're structured in a different way. So in good data governance, our task is not to ask people to fill out a well-calibrated survey instrument. Our task is to understand what they mean when they say certain words. And it's that difference in language that gives us early sense of where issues actually are.
Yes, yeah. I think that difference in language is so important. And going to the questions of why would they even ask me that, I had a bit of a chuckle because I think even in this, smart city space, smart community space, particularly when I'm in regional areas, it's like I don't even have internet connectivity. How can you ask me about, do I want, not that an autonomous vehicle or something like that? It's like, that's the wrong question.
It's interesting, right? Because the question asker is seeking to get, is using a question to get a sense of a particular issue in a city. But cities aren't homogenous. They're wildly diverse and in many cases quite inequitable. And so a super smart tech-based question will fall flat in certain communities. That's because they just don't share a common construct. And this is one of the hidden things in tech, as a general principle that if you're good if you've already got tech, you will benefit from tech. If you haven't got tech, you'll get left behind, which again goes to the issue of underserved communities who are already dealing with, they've already got, dodgy water and bad roads, et cetera, et cetera. They're very easy to keep getting bad connectivity and the set of digital risks that comes with deprivation.
Yeah, and it's like instead of baking in smart community thinking to these really essential services and needs, right? If we don't bake it in, then we're not going to get the engagement or the results or whatever that we actually want for our communities and that the communities need, because we'll be asking these kind of overarching questions that at the time, like you just said, if they're already tech-enabled, they go, yep, cool, how can I improve my already tech-enabled life? Whereas if they're surviving, they're still, in survival mode of, well, I don't even have clean water. How can you ask me about building an e-commerce business or whatever it is? I think that's where the shift needs to happen or is happening. And I've seen it in this space where smart cities have been seeing this big shiny thing with all these other bells and whistles and stuff. Yes, we've talked about it's about the people, but if we don't leave that, I guess, concept behind and focus in on those needs and bake it in that way, I think, that's the only way forward in this space, I think.
Yeah, great. I love that. Baking community engagement in. Things will take longer, put it that way, okay? Things will take longer because more meaningful conversations have to happen. The flip side to that is that the more conversations happen, the better we can co-design, the lower our overall cost of deployment. And so essentially you get into not a perpetual beta, but quite a long testing period before something's rolled out. And it's more likely to be accepted because community is engaged with it. It's not being done to them or for them, which are fundamentally disempowering. It's being done with them and by them to themselves. And that is the victory from my perspective.
Yeah, I agree. And I think there's, this radical level of engagement, this radical shift in engagement, as in I think it's not just a slight shift, it's like this complete step change. And so it takes time for people on both sides to get used to that step change as well.
Yeah. Two things just jumped to mind, actually. One of them is we're used to dealing with the concept of communities and the relationship with the municipal authority. But the other element is communities learning to engage with each other within the context of the city. It's the different ethnic groups. Literally, it's as important as making sure that you attend all the local ethnic food fairs. That's how we come together and get a truer sense of our civic selves. And the same applies to the smart and digital and data space. Okay,
let's shift gear a bit here, and maybe it's not shifting at all because it's all connected and related. But with, I know I made myself laugh there a little bit. Algorithms. Now, there's lots of talk about algorithms. Some people are, particularly in our community groups, they're like, what is that? What does it even mean? That's too high tech for me. When we are talking about algorithms and, bias in algorithms and, that we're not being treated fairly by algorithms.
Yeah.
What does that actually mean to a community, and what are the things that we need to be thinking about and the questions we need to be asking?
Oh, okay. Very simply, the issue boils down to someone somewhere is making a decision about you, and their primary input is a computer that says no or yes. Mm-hmm. So it's the fact that no one actually quite understands why the system said no, why your loan application was denied, why your rent is higher, why all these various things. Is that where there is no clear sense of accountability or transparency in the decision making, all of a sudden we have, a basic fundamental accountability issue. And that's where I think the problem originates.
And what are some things that we could do now to change that? I mean, obviously that's a huge question. And if we would have solved that by now if it was simple. But I think for me, it's starting to ask the questions. Like we're seeing it more in mainstream, getting questioning of algorithms and things that are happening. What are some of the things that we can ask or do in this space to make things more transparent?
Oh, great. There's a very simple question that we just have to ask and keep asking until we get a decent answer. And the question is, quote unquote, why are these the rules? And when we ask that question in not a shouty way and, not trying to create trouble, just genuinely want to understand why these are the rules, we move into a place of algorithmic accountability when the human answerer says, oh, well, this particular computer system has this particular role in the decision that I just made. And they know more or less how that decision system was configured. So this is the thing. This is really odd. This is one thing that puzzles me with robotics and AI, is that people will tend to accept an answer from a robot or an AI with less doubt than they would from a human. So when computer says yes or computer says no, they go, oh, it's a yes or it's a no. They don't go, hang on, computer, hang on, why did you come up with that? So we don't tend to ask the question of the AI and the various automated decision-making processes behind those questions, but we would ask them of a human. And this is one of the creeping AI ethics issues, is how many of these decisions that are presented to us are simply completely automated and there is no human in the loop.
And I think the transparency element is an interesting one, particularly from a government standpoint, that the question of why is that happening in this way is an important one. And I think when we do ask humans, we expect an answer, and whether we like it or not, we get some kind of answer. But I've been doing some machine learning, like building of models, as part of my master's degree, and we know what the inputs are. Yes, we can't fathom, the big data and exactly every data point necessarily, but we know what the inputs are, and we know the why is, well, there was a series of inputs and they, reflected in a certain way, and we trained the model and we did these things. I think if we explain things more in that sense, then it would force us to be, when you're forced to be more transparent, then humans are forced to think about, well, is that okay? Or is this ethical? Whereas when it's all in a black box and we don't have to tell people about it, then I agree. I think there's this element of, this not knowing, and even the humans making the decision not knowing. And I think that's where this, the ethics component comes in. It's like, how can we possibly say that that's the right way to do it?
Great. And that's the right level of meta question to ask. I pulled out a couple of notes there. The first is this thing called maker's knowledge. And the second thing is this strange paradox that things can be explained but not understood. The first is maker's knowledge, that we're in this situation of when we have automated decision-making system built on other automated decision-making systems, we start to get algorithmic complexity. We lose maker's knowledge. So it's not like a clock. We can open it and go, look, I can figure out how everything works. That's maker's knowledge. With this with the black box and scrutability issue, we can't in some situations. We can't actually explain it. We don't have maker's knowledge. That leads to the second point, explained, not understood, which I've started trying to tease out on my blog. This whole, as I'm watching a field of AI called XAI, explainable AI, and the various lengths people are going to with regards to trying to explain the deeper why are these the rules. And what's happening is really good, cogent, coherent, crisp, clear, succinct explanations are coming out, but people still aren't understanding it. And that's leading me to worry a bit about the erosion of the role of experts in society. And I'm now starting to think that, well, if we do want people to understand what's going on here, having more experts say more expert things more expertly isn't going to do it. And I don't have an answer for that. That's a dilemma I'm working through right now.
No, thanks for bringing that up, because that's also a dilemma in my head as well. I've been thinking a lot about it. It's like, particularly in the data space, because I'm doing a master's in data science, but I want to get more into the technical side of things. My background, I am an engineer, but have been working more in the kind of project management, strategy, that type of thing. So I want to get my hands dirty again with math and tech and whatever. And what I found is, as a learner, like a student of this stuff, there is so many tools out there that you can get an answer. You can put some things together. You can build a model, in inverted commas, quite easily, which is great for that kind of, and I don't want to say surface level understanding, but kind of like accessible understanding of data, and then being able to share a result. But I do find there's a balance and a danger that there's so many tools out there that anybody can share and be an expert and, seen to be an expert in this space. But then without that deep knowledge of, how this is operating and how we can build it to, people are building it and coding and all those type of things, we do lose what you were just talking about, which is that expertise or that trusting expert advice. And I find, it's something I've been dealing with too. So I don't have an answer for that, but thank you for bringing up that dilemma.
My sense is that the deeper an expert goes, the broader the consensus or the conversation that expert feeds into. So if we have quite a narrow number of groups, not a particularly well-represented slice of a city, and you drop a bunch of experts in there, you'll get quite a different result than if you dropped experts into a broad consensus environment. And the reason is we can ask more broader questions of that expert. And as the expert is asked more questions, they will start to see the shape and the strengths and the weaknesses of their particular area of expertise. And that's when we start to figure out how to move in this complex beast.
It's another thing I've been doing on this kind of, you've got deep technical expertise and knowledge, and unfortunately, I think this is the way it is, that's not enough anymore in the world that we live in. You need to also be able to communicate in a way that people can trust and that you can also have your expertise challenged, but you have enough knowledge to be able to know what can and can't be challenged too. So complex. I'm encouraging, particularly in the smart community space, I'm always encouraging more people to get involved in the conversation because they bring their own expertise to it.
Yep.
But it doesn't mean that you then have to, now I'm a community engagement person within the smart community space. I don't automatically need to be an expert in blockchain, and I'm not going to be, but that's okay because the part that I bring to the conversation is really important as well. And then we can have those, I guess, at the table conversations because that's what we need in this multidisciplinary space.
It's that bridging that has to happen. So the blockchain expert needs community problems in order to configure their blockchain as a solution, but the people in the community need to understand what blockchain might be a solution for. And so part of our task is to encourage these conversations so that the tech people walk away smarter and the community people walk away smarter.
Yeah. I love that. And I love that concept of that as well, that, we're all in this space and the conversation is a mutually beneficial one. And I am very much of the opinion that that approach can help us to facilitate and have these bridging conversations, as we build these smart communities out. So, thank you for sharing that.
Oh, kia ora, no worries.
Okay, I realised that we've been talking for a long time and it's been great and I've really enjoyed this conversation. I just want to shift into the future and want to talk about the emerging trends that people aren't talking about enough.
Yeah. Okay. So when I prepped for this, the answer that I came up with was the role of art or street art as a means of dealing with the techno shock that we are currently going through. So we know that we are experiencing all sorts of really significant tech-based events in our cities, and we know that there isn't enough voice of the community within that tech situation, hence the explained but not understood phenomena. And I'm interested in the role art plays and what the emergent new urban artists are making of this, as particularly with facial recognition technology and the growth of surveillance. How are they expressing, how are they viewing the issue and how are they expressing it? Because I think that's going to give us a better sense of what to work on.
Yeah, I really love that. And I have had, people talking about the role of public art and I guess artists in this space and creatives in this space. So thanks so much for bringing that up again. I'm part of a conference. We're getting a guy from a university who's been doing some, I see them as art installations, but more research on AI and facial recognition. And so I think bringing that, his presentation, anyone can get something out of it. It's not, it's not super tech. There's some real tech behind it, but it's actually about displaying the current biases and how when you feed in only limited data to these facial recognition technologies, that you can have some real funny, effects when you're just having a bit of a play with it. But then if you then think about, well, if this is actually implemented at scale in a community, then the detrimental impact that it can have. So, it's kind of showing those limitations without being too serious.
The techniques that I'm using to explore this art or the role of arts in AI is I'm taking the viewpoint of artists like Picasso, who talked a lot about art, and then sort of swapping out arty words for sciencey words and seeing if the sentences still make sense. And the one that I have got here is Picasso asked, it was a rhetorical question, who sees the human face correctly, the photographer, the mirror, or the painter? And so just a bit of wordplay there. We go, well, which of the three is the AI looking at the human face? Are we seen as a photograph? Are we seen as a mirror? Or are we seen as a painting? And once we start dipping into that, we can quite quickly get to really morally problematic places. And we can get there faster than if we are going down the usual, this is not ethical, and this is a violation of my privacy route, which people know is important, but it doesn't enable them to grapple with the topic. And so using these essentially art criticism techniques, I think, will give us a way forward, particularly for a better vocabulary.
That really brings us back around from what we were talking about earlier, which is the language, right?
Yep.
And no, I really love that. Now I just want to do a Smart Communities art installation.
Totally. Helping society express itself, helping people express themselves in a way that doesn't involve them taking to the streets and ending up in violent situations is really good, I think, right now. Mm-hmm. Really got to find a better way to help ourselves communicate with ourselves about these strange issues, this data stuff and this algorithm stuff. All of that technology element is a distraction. It's just people in communities, in a society, in a city.
Yeah. And using it to connect with people that we've been polarized to disconnect with.
Oh, yeah. Totally. This is the big issue. A big issue in data governance is the filter bubble. There is a great experiment going on right now. It's run by the Markup in the US. It's called Citizen Browser. There's a bunch of people are sharing their Facebook feeds with the Markup. Those people cross the red and blue political line in the US, and we're actually able to see the difference of what Facebook feeds up to the various people, whether or not they are blue or red, and therefore how self-reinforcing their filter bubbles are. That's, for me, the big thing cities need to get across is misinformation and disinformation. And they've got to hit it hard, because that's something that's said in the safety of your living room via Facebook can end up on the street.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I just started an experiment myself with my friends, my global friends, just even searching certain words or phrases. I've got friends all over the world and sending me back a screenshot of the first page.
Yeah.
And really interesting to see. But then, everything kind of got dominated by COVID when I started that. So anyway, I will start again. Well, it's been so great to chat with you, Rohan. Thank you so much for coming on to the Smart Community Podcast.
Yes, it has. We've rattled along.
I know. I think we'll have to have another conversation because, I really enjoyed having this conversation with you, and I think there's lots of different topics we could cover. And definitely, I thanks for bringing up the art again, because I love when it comes back into my vision. So it's really great to have this convo with you, and we'll definitely talk soon.
Yeah, sweet as. Thank you very much for having me on, and all the best for your projects this year, Zoe.
Thank you. We'll talk soon. Bye.
Okay. Kia ora. Bye-bye.
Are you looking for an engaging speaker, MC, or facilitator for your next big event? Then we've got you covered. Zoe is a go-to speaker, MC, and conversation facilitator with a difference. She's a master at simplifying the complex and making connections you might never see. Book Zoe for your next event. Email hello@mysmart.community or head over to her speaker page, www.mysmart.community/speaking.
Thanks so much for listening to the Smart Community Podcast. Show notes for this episode and all other episodes are available on our website, mysmart.community/podcast. If you have any questions for us or any of our guests, you can email hello@mysmart.community. You can also find us on the socials. We are on LinkedIn and Twitter @SmartComHQ. That's com with 2 M's. If you are enjoying the podcast, please hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. And we would love for you to leave us a rating and review at wherever you listen. This really helps us reach more ears and eyes, so thank you for your support. As always, we hope you enjoyed listening to this episode as much as we enjoyed making it.
The Smart Community Podcast is what you're looking for.